Hello and welcome to our webinar. Alta Via welcomes you to this information meeting about German VAT changes on July 1st, 2020, what to do in NetSuite. Before we start, I would like to go through some housekeeping. During the webinar, you can ask questions directly in the chat in this webinar tool, and we are going to discuss them one by one at the end of the meeting. Our agenda for today, at first, Seifert and Sadlo will discuss the implications from a tax perspective. This will be a very brief introduction to the topic, and afterwards we talk about the changes that we expect NetSuite to make in the next few weeks. And after that, we go through a checklist, for each point which needs to be considered when checking your account for changes that might have to be made. And in the end, we're going through automation in our Alta Via bundles, mainly German bundle, but also travel expense or DATEV bundle. In the end, we'll discuss questions which you can post in this tool. Now, Sören Seifert from Seifert and Sadlo will go through the introduction from a tax perspective. Sören. Sören is still muted. Unmute Sören. There we go.
Hey.
Hello, Sören.
I think everyone can hear me now. Thanks for the quick introduction, Georg. Yeah, as Georg already said, we would just like to give you a very brief overview of the topic itself, the current status of the law enforcement, and some specialties within the new regulations that will be decided still. We ourselves, as Seifert and Sadlo GmbH, we are tax advisors and auditors, and we are also using NetSuite in our bookkeeping in NetSuite for our clients. So we are also very curious on the second part of this webinar on how NetSuite will technically implement the changes. So I think the basic changes are known to everyone. There's a reduction in the VAT rates in Germany, and the regular VAT rate will decrease from 19 to 16%, and the reduced VAT rate will be further reduced from 7 to 5%. And this is supposed to be happening for a limited period of time from the 1st of July 2020, which is already in 2 weeks' time, and then through the 31st of December 2020. When you look at the timeline, this is really a very, very fast law enforcement. The first resolution by the coalition was made on June the 3rd, and the final resolution by the Federal Council is planned for calendar week 26. So it's all done within about 4 weeks, and normally this takes 4 months. And due to this, there's still some uncertainty of how specific topics will be addressed practically. So on the next 2 slides, we would just like to give you an overview of some specialties that will pop up going forward, and the current status of how they most likely will be addressed and what practical implications this will have. Georg, can you please go to the next slide?
Slide is up.
Thank you. So for VAT and to determine whether the currently applicable or the reduced rates will apply is the point of time of the performance of the service or the supply of the goods. And in general, the relevant point of time for a supply, so for shipping of goods, for example, is when the recipient achieves the control of the good. And for services, it's the completion of the service. So I think for the supply, it's very clear whenever the recipients get the goods, that is a point in time that's relevant. So if it's on July the 1st, then the 16% VAT rate or the reduced rate will apply. If it still happens on the 30th of June, it would still be 19% VAT, regardless of when the contract was signed or when the invoice is issued. It's only determined by when the recipient achieves the control. It's a bit more complicated when you look at other services because it's a completion of the service. It still sounds simple, but we will see on some of the selected specialties that it's not always that simple to determine when the service was completed. There are some special treatments for intra-community acquisitions and reverse charge services. For them, it's relevant when the invoice was issued. And at the latest, it's the month following the issuance of the invoice. That is when the VAT for intra-community acquisitions arises. And so this could be one of the cases, or this is one of the cases where it's still uncertain of how this will be determined. And if, for example, you acquire it at the end of June, but the invoice is issued only in July, or then the month following would be the end of July. So this is something where still a bit of uncertainty, and we will just have to wait on how also the tax authorities will bring light into this topic. When we're now looking at some of the selected specialties, prepayments might be one of the areas that a lot of companies are affected of. So the basic question is if you have received a prepayment invoice or you issued a prepayment invoice until June the 30th, but the service will be provided only after July the 1st, but still before December 31st, what VAT rates do apply. So if you already paid or received or issued a prepayment invoice in the past, it hopefully was at 19% VAT rate. Or well, let's make the example that it should have been 19% VAT. Of course, there could also be different VAT rates that would have applied. But you then, for example, delivered the good in August. So you already issued the prepayment invoice at 90% and the final invoice would have to be issued at 16% because the recipient achieved the control only in August. Then the correction of the VAT would have to be made on the final invoice. So you can leave the prepayment invoice as it is at 19%. And when you issue the final invoice at 16%, you would decrease the 3% additional VAT that the recipient already paid from the payment amount due. When looking at continuous services, for example, rent or leases, but also for licenses and membership fees, that is the bullet below. The question is whether it's possible to break down the services into partial services. That means there are basically two criteria if it's possible to distinguish the services from an economically and reasonably perspective. And also there's an agreement between the vendor and the supplier, between the customer and the supplier. And that is most likely given if also there's a separate billing for the separate periods. Then you have single services or partial services, where for each of the services at the end of the service period, the VAT arises. So for example, if you have a rent contract that is for 2 years, in those cases, you most likely have separable services for each month, meaning that until the end of June, in each month, one partial service occurs at 19% VAT, if VAT is applicable for your rent, but also for lease contracts. And then for the period from July through December, it would be reduced to 60% because at the end of each month, service is completed. If it's a membership fee, an annual membership fee, and you prepaid it in January already, but the end of the membership fee, because it's an annual fee, would be at the end of December, you would have prepaid already at 19%, but the actual VAT rate will be 16%, because the end of the service period and it's only one complete service for one annual membership fee, would only be in December. So this is something where you would have to at least go to discussions with whoever the contract was made with, and to determine how to solve the problem. Vouchers are generally more complex topic in German VAT. In general, there are two kinds of vouchers. It's single-use vouchers and multi-use vouchers. Single-use vouchers, they are subject to VAT. And single-use vouchers are vouchers where the place where the voucher will be used and the VAT rate at which the voucher will be used. And now, since, well, let's say you had a voucher that could only be used in Germany, could only be used for services at 9% VAT, then that most likely was a single-use voucher. But now, since there's a period of 6 months, and you do not know whether the customer will be use one of those vouchers within the period or within a different period, it's practically mostly impossible to have to be because you cannot be certain that the person who purchased the voucher will actually use it either until the end of June or from July through December or starting January 2021 again. And so it's expected that all of the vouchers will be used going forward will be multi-use vouchers. Another topic is rebates and chargebacks. So meaning off-invoice rebates, for example, off-invoice deductions, where you get a bonus from your supplier, depending on the volume of transactions you had in the past year. And the practical problem now is that you receive a supply from January through December, but for half the year, the VAT rate was, for example, 90%, and for the other half, it was 16%. So the question is, at which rate the chargeback would be given out to you again? And at least in the past, the tax authority has if you are distinguished depending on the actual volume. So not only saying 50% of the time was at 90% and 50% of the time 16%, but also looking at how much transaction volume was the first half and was in the second part.
Excuse me, Sven.
Yeah, can you? Yeah.
Sorry, Søren, the audio quality on your side is not very good, and I get a lot of feedback from our audience that they can hardly hear you.
Okay.
What I suggest is that we continue with Kerstin's part, and after Kerstin spoke, maybe you can reset your internet connection, and then we try it again at this point.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So, sorry for this. Internet seems to be not good in supporting us. As a next step and the next speaker, we ask Kerstin Fischer to continue the presentation. Kerstin, I will hand over the presenter rights to you.
Okay.
And you are going through the presentation with us.
Okay, so I'm Kerstin Fischer. I'm working with Alta Via Consulting with NetSuite since 2013. Mostly in the area accounting and controlling, and that's the reason why I will help a little bit out to present today the changes which might happen or will happen with the VAT rate changes on July 1st, 2020. So I'll start off with our agenda. You already heard some of the topics Søren Seifert mentioned from a tax and legal perspective. Now, what I would like to do is give you some ideas what will happen in NetSuite. What do you have to look for the changes in your own setup and systems, and what we can help you with the required changes to make and to be safe and sound on both ends, the legal, the tax, from a business perspective as well as from a technical perspective. Okay, so I put together a slide which shows what do I see from all sides of this topic. We have the Corona tax change or tax support law. It's hard to translate. I think there is no English translation correctly. What it means from a legal and technical, from a tax perspective, you already heard some topics from Sören. I think what you also need to understand, it has implications on the company side. You have your business processes, you have your specific NetSuite setup, which is different from company to company. You have your special transactions, how you do business with your customers, with your end customers, B2B business. What implications do we have? It has implications on your end. In each company, you have to take considerations. You have to make considerations. What do I have to change? What do I have to worry about? What do I have to keep in mind? Also, I have to think about the technical side of this, because we are using an ERP system. NetSuite provides support on the technical side. We have, for the German subsidiaries, we use the International Tax Bundle. Most of you are probably familiar with this International Tax Bundle, which provides tax settings for companies outside the US. This bundle is a managed bundle provided by NetSuite. It's installed in your system, and it keeps all the information related to tax codes, tax rates, tax reporting, the tax engine, tax determination, etc., based on country-specific requirements. So now we got the information from NetSuite that NetSuite is working on adding additional functionality to the International Tax Bundle. Right now, we do not know when you and we will receive the update for this bundle. However, we do know that we will have additional tax codes with a reduced rate. In addition to our standard rate, 19% tax code, we will have a second one, which is standard reduced, 16%. We have the reduced tax code, 7%, plus an additional tax code for 5%. Then every kind of tax code which has a notional rate inside, which relates to EU tax codes, sales and purchase of goods and services within the EU, which are subject to reverse charge tax codes on an international and a domestic level, which are subject to reverse charge. All these tax codes need to be created new because they all are based on the notional standard rate in Germany. So we will have a lot of new tax codes also for companies who are specialized in delivery, like electronic services with minimal human intervention. They have special types of tax codes, the MOS tax codes, the same logic as described before. So all tax codes which are related back to the standard rate, the reduced rate in Germany, EU business, any kind of tax code related to EU business, as well as reverse charge procedure on the tax code side for domestic and international, will be impacted on this change and need to be set up new. Now, I said before, NetSuite will provide this information. However, at the moment, we are still in the stage that the law is not, it's not finalized yet. So, and NetSuite is working on it. So it might take a little while until we get this update. So just keep this in mind for your business consideration. We are only 2 weeks away from this deadline, and we might have some timing issues on this. So the tax engine, the tax determination process, which NetSuite provides, the automatic tax determination for customer invoices, credit memos, etc., will still be in place, will not change. However, it can handle only one set of tax codes. You need to take in, you have to keep in mind that this might also be important to think about. So what needs to be done in NetSuite? You have a general setup by Nexus, which is based on country. I would say it's like a container with all tax settings, which is used system-wide for the German tax registered companies. They need to be adjusted. This is a customization functionality will not be provided by NetSuite. So as you can see here, and maybe some of you are familiar with the setup taxes, it need to be changed from the regular standard tax code, which has 19%, to the new tax code, which has only the 16%. The same applies to our master data information, and I keep this as, I would say this applies to items. If you set specific information on the customer or on the vendor side regarding which tax code should be the default or should be used. So this information you have to keep in your mind, and we have to work on this, that this needs to be adjusted. So as said before, the tax determination, the tax engine will use the new tax codes. However, as mentioned from the Sören before, we will have specific situations where we would still need to apply the old tax code, the 19%, because of regulations when the service was provided, or the goods were delivered, or we are sending something back, etc. So there are plenty of different situations where we still would use and need the old tax codes. Okay, so Sören already mentioned specific situations. Now, this is actually really your part in your own company to think about what type of transactions and what scenarios do I have where I have to worry about tax code changes. So one example would be order date and invoice date are different from fulfillment. So Sören said criteria for the tax determination is always the delivering of a service or the fulfillment of items. It's not the date of the invoice, which could be way in advance or could be way later on. It's not the order date which makes the determination. Then if you have prepayments or advanced billing, it's the same story. For example, you have a prepayment invoice sent out in May. The customer has already paid, which would be 90%. However, services delivered would be in August. The final invoice now needs to have the 60%. And you have to, if you have situations like this, you have to come up with a solution how this could be handled, that you have an advance payment with 90% and you have a final invoice with 16% to make it correct from a tax perspective as well as from your customer's perspective. Okay, so then we have partial fulfillments would be an interesting transaction type you have to worry about if you have partially delivered in May and partially delivered in July. So you have two different situations which would require different rates for your taxes. Then we have the returns, the credit memo, correction of invoices. Afterwards, then we have the licenses, continuous services. You heard this before. The down payments I already mentioned. And we have the memorized transactions feature we are using in NetSuite, which are based on pre-entered transactions and then will be posted on a regular schedule. So usually the taxes are set in your pre-recorded transaction, and then this setting would be used for your continuous posted transactions. So it might be interesting to also think about these kind of transactions and what could be done, what should be done on this end. Another area where you should pay special attention would be on your PDF side, any kind of document you are generating and sending out to your customers. Here it's mentioning the invoice documents, the invoice PDFs. Because if you have on your PDF developed a special solution which goes by text code and it's hard coded, for example, or it's based on specific internal IDs, etc., the system would not, the PDF would not pick up the new or changed tax rate on this. So you have to go back and should take a closer look at your PDFs. Just to make sure that the correct rate is picked up. And also, specifically in the EU business, we have certain requirements. If, for example, if you sell a service to a customer within the EU, it's not only the tax code which is relevant, it's also a specific wording, sentences you have to put on your invoice to make sure that the customer understands that it's a reverse charge, the requirement that the customer needs to report VAT, even though the rate is 0%. You have to put this sentence on your invoice, otherwise the seller is responsible for the VAT. So it could be very expensive. So usually what we do is we have a table which connects the text code with a specific sentence and then will be picked up by a PDF printout. The solution could be extended with the new text codes and the related sentences on this part. Another topic might be the pricing on your items, the price lists. You have in NetSuite the net amount on the price list. However, you need to think about from a business perspective, do you change the net amount? Do you want to absorb the change? Just keep the amount, the net amount stable. Also, if you have interfaces which provides information into NetSuite for generating sales orders invoices, depends on what you are sending. If you are sending the information which text code to use in NetSuite, that's another thing you should take in consideration and maybe adjust to the needed new text codes. So here you have some samples, EDI interfaces, web shops, etc. Now, what does Alta Via do? We provide certain bundles, certain functions to our customers. One bundle would be the German bundle, which provides specific functionality localization to German companies. We will extend this German bundle from the functionality that we will have an option to maintain a translation table, like a mapping table, as you see here, to see this was the previously used text code, this would be the new text code, the naming, whatever the naming will be. And based on what you set on your transaction, the system would determine, oh, before it was SDE, the standard rate. Now it's a new rate, it's S16 minus DE, and would just adjust your transaction. At the moment, we are also thinking about this flag on transactions and the mapping table to help that it's easy to maintain the transactions you have already in the system and adjust them just using this flag. Which kind of tax rate would be the required one without having to change all the existing ones. And this could even be automated, this feature, using workflow functionality if needed. Some companies don't have this many transactions. They say, well, it's perfect that the system allows me to do this manually. I don't need to automate it. But it could save you a lot of time, because this VAT change is only for 6 months, has the option to be extended, but there will be an end. And then we have to go back, or we will go back to the 19 and the 7%. Including also the EU tax codes and so on. We also will adjust the VAT clawback, the tax adjustment, which is needed if you have cash discount payments that the customer or the vendor will reduce the payment based on certain early payment rebates. Which requires that you adjust your tax posting and in your tax reporting. In the travel expense side, the German travel expense bundle, we have right now default tax codes on the tax category, on the expense category, which now needs to change. There will be also, based on the mapping table, the option, without creating new expense categories, to use the reduced rates. Last but not least, we have the dative bundle, the interface who exports all the transactions, converts them into dative posting logic, and sends it to the tax advisor and the tax accountant office for their year-end closing, for tax reporting on a yearly basis, etc. This will also be extended for the new required tax codes, including the tax keys and the automatic accounts, etc. So now put everything together into one place. There's a lot of activity right now. We don't have the final decision yet, but we are pretty sure that the decision will come before July 1st. We have to make the changes and we need to get ready. And just to put this together on one slide, you as a company, as a customer, have to think about the implication from a business perspective. NetSuite and we will do our support on the technical side, as well as if you need adjustments here, if you have identified the areas, we will support you in finding solutions. So from your end, you really have to think about what implication do I have on my business side, and then let's find solutions. And as I said, since we have a very short time window of time to make these changes and adaptations, feel free to ask us directly, because NetSuite is working on it, we are working on it, and I have certain customers where already created the new tax codes in their sandbox systems, that they can start to test their interfaces, they can start to test their transactions. We will be ready for tax reporting requirements, even though it will not be fully automated because of the time frame. So as I said, we are ready to go on this part. If you have any kind of questions, just let us know today. You can ask your questions, we will try to answer them, but also just contact us afterwards, and we are more than happy to help to make this happen. for you and for your German subsidiaries? Thanks.
Thank you, Kerstin. I will now get back to Sören Seifert. We also dialed in Norman Sadlow as a backup speaker. So Sören, let us continue with the slide 2 where you were. I'm going to show the slide, and I think it makes sense if in a few words you start over with this slide, just so we are all in the context.
Yeah, I hope the connection is better now. Georg,
it doesn't sound like
the connection's not.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would suggest Norman.
Yeah, maybe
can you pick up?
Norman.
Yeah. Norman, we need you to unmute. Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm no longer muted. Thanks, Georg. Thanks, Sören. Yeah. Yeah, I'm also a managing director at Seifert Sattler. I will continue. Hopefully, you can hear me better than Sören. So
it works well.
Would follow on with a second slide. Sören already presented. I think Sören already told that for the VAT. For the right point of time is important for the VAT assessment, whether the service is effective in the new or in the new period with a decreased VAT rates, or in that old period, so before June 1st. And what is point of time depends a little bit whether we have a supply or an other service, or something like a special treatment for inter-community acquisitions or reverse charge transactions. Usually the right point is then it is important to figure out what is a right point of time based on your contracts. This is a first step, and this is then important, and there are some specialities related to that assessment, for which that might be not 100% sure on the first view. So prepayments could be a problem, or as well as continuous services, where you need to distinguish between whether the service could be splitted into several partial service, whether this is possible given the contract, or whether this is not possible. So there are two indications, one from an economic point of view and one from a contractual point of view. So is there a separate billing process behind that, or is that not? So that would be the contractual point. So you have to distinguish all contracts you have. Yeah, for prepayments in a German session, we became the question how this is for software licenses. When the effective point of time for the VAT treatment is, and for software licenses, this is usually at the end of the contract, which would be December 31. Usually, if you have a annual license fee, so you have to use reduced VAT rates for that. So 16% would be the right VAT code then, and that and for this purpose, so if you have already received some prepayments for that licenses for the coming year, that you might need an correction. I mean, there are several ways for a correction, but you have definitely to think about a correction as a right VAT code would be 16% then. So we have some other specialities for vouchers. In German VAT law, you have to decide throughout different kind of vouchers, and those have also other VAT treatments at the end. If you have if you need or have significant amount of vouchers you deal with, maybe we can talk about that in the Q&As. We have also specialities related to rebates and or chargebacks, as you have to distinguish in which period the chargeback is, or to which period the relevant chargeback is related to. You also have to think about that when doing the VAT assessment of that reduced rates. Georg, can you please follow on with the next slide? Then on this slide we show what we want to talk about what happened if we just don't take care and just issue your invoices with existing VAT codes, so with 19% or 7%. What does that mean? That leads to consequences for the service provider, for you, as well as for the recipient of that invoice of that service. At the end, the recipient owns 3% of or cannot get a VAT reduction when you issue the invoice with 19%, for example. He can only own and he can only declare 16% back from German tax authorities. So he would so 3% would be an expense of him. So for the recipient, so that could be a problem for him, or would be a problem for him. And for you, the consequence would be that you have to owe 19% to the tax authority. So if you issue a failure invoice with that 19%, that would be a problem for you as well as for the recipient, which is then also a challenge for yourself as recipient of vendor bills, as you have to, as you need to intensify your review of vendor bills, especially around that cutoff, so around the 1st of June, to identify any failure vendor bills as early as possible, to send back and ask for a correct invoice, because if you do not do this, then that might lead to additional problems in the end. So you should really intensify your review, as well as a review for travel expenses. You know that maybe Sören already told that there's also some update on the VAT codes for restaurant services and so on. So you also hotellery might be effective. So especially the travel expenses are an intensive field where intensified review is needed with respect to VAT changes. You have to also look into, you also have to do the review for existing contracts with respect to any VAT clauses, and have to assess whether this could be a problem and could be not a problem, where you need an extension or whether you do not need an extension. So there is also a specific paragraph, which is 29 of the VAT law in Germany, where a compensation might be possible if just a fixed price, a lump sum, is contracted, agreed, or contractually agreed and now the VAT decreases from 19 to 16%, then you have also maybe to adjust that contractually agreed fixed amount by decreasing about 3% then. So, but that depends really on the specific clause in the contract. So each clause have to be reviewed and assessed. And we just want to we just want to give you that information so that you can do that. And yeah, overall, you need, like Kirsten already informed you, there need to be an integration in your NetSuite system of new VAT codes and accounts. And for sure, all your templates and calculations, internal templates and calculations have to be updated if you're using those old VAT codes. Yes, I think that's it from our tax advisor side. Just let us know in the Q&As if you have some follow-up questions on that. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Norman. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to bring up our slide from the presentation. So here we go, Q&A session. Through the panel, I received 3 questions. So I'm going to read the first question, and then Kerstin, Norman, or Peter can jump in and answer it. The first question goes, how annual software renewals should be treated in terms of VAT, assuming that they start on July 1st, 2020 and end on June 30th, 2021. Should we split the VAT, or can we issue an invoice, one invoice of 16%? Norman, I think this goes to you.
From Norman, just
So,
answering. Okay, go ahead.
It's so like I said, for licenses, normally it becomes the VAT rate. It becomes effective at the end of that license fee period, which I understand to be mid of. So it was June 2021, where the normal VAT should be 90% then again. So the invoice, so as long as those license is contractually not agreed to be, in the case partial parts, it could be not split it into partial parts, which is not normal for licenses. So normally licenses could not be splitted like a rental contract or so, where you have a separate billing for each month. So this is not the case for licenses. So due to this, it becomes effective in 2021, I guess, which if it's a standard license, and due to this, you have to use 90% for the VAT code.
No, maybe I can add another question to this. We have a lot of cases where we have such contracts, and we have billing schedules. So you get a monthly bill. The customer has a 1-year license from July 1st to June 30th, but he has a monthly billing schedule. So you get an invoice in July 1st, August 1st, September 1st, October 1st.
If you
is the same, or would you think that then?
No, it would be then it would be not the same assessment if you have not a 1-year billing schedule in advance. If you have really a monthly billing schedule, then you have monthly services, and then you have to distinguish. Then for the period from June to December 2020, you would need to issue the bills with that reduced VAT rate, and afterwards, if something then really changed, maybe they that will still stay. But if not, then you have to issue with that 19%.
Okay.
Like I said, that really depends on the contractual agreed features of the contract. Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you so far. Next question. Hello, would you please share a list of text codes with the associated information, sentences that needs to be printed on invoice PDFs, please? I guess this question goes to Alta Via.
Kerstin?
Yeah. Sorry.
Do you want me to read the question again?
Yes, we could provide a list like this. However, the wording is it's different from company to company. So it's you have the requirement, you have the legal requirement to put the sentence on the invoice. However, the wording of the sentence, it really depends on the company. So if you have a German subsidiary, or then I would recommend that you ask the accountants from their end what they would like to put on the invoices. So the text code, I can provide the wording for the sentences. We can give you samples, or just send us a quick note, and then I will give you some samples. But in general, based on the experience, it's mainly that we ask the tax advisor for the specific customer or the customer themselves what they want to put on their invoices.
But we can provide a list of examples for
yes,
the mail.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So next question. Should we receive another webinar after the bundle introduction? I guess this is a question regarding the NetSuite bundle and also the Alta Via bundles.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I think there might be a webinar. I have not get any information on this from NetSuite itself. Would make sense if they provide something with their bundle. And from our end, I would say it very much depends on how many changes we will see, or how many future ideas we get, if this makes sense, to come up with the second webinar where we really come to a new conclusion. So you will get a newsletter from us anyway with any new findings. And if we see it so much that it does make sense to really start and have another session, we of course would invite you to such a session to have an area to discuss this. Okay.
Okay. Next question. We created new tax codes, 16% and 5%. Will they be automatically pulled in preliminary VAT report, Umsatzsteuervoranmeldung?
Yeah. Okay. Answer is.
I think the answer is no.
No. But the answer is not automatically in the existing one. I think the answer is multi-layers. First,
yes.
we assume that the tax authority, the German tax authority, comes around with a new report. So it's a changed report with new boxes where the new tax code has a place to go. That's number one. So that's not yet there. So we're still waiting for this. And then second, we expect NetSuite to take care of this, that they ensure that the new tax codes, they come along, has been automatically pulled into the right boxes in the new tax reporting. This is our expectation. For the time being, we neither have the new report nor has not anything done so far. We will see. It's probably not will not be there at the end of June. I assume this earliest at end of July, but we will keep you updated. Make sense, Kerstin?
Yeah, it does. And to be prepared, I mean, right now we already have we have 4 tax reconciliation reports in the system, which pick any tax code and the associated transactions and the amounts and put them together. Even though we don't have the boxes at the moment, and even though we don't have the final file generated to be sent to the tax authorities, we should be ready to have the numbers we have to report. As soon as the authorities tell us where these numbers have to go, even if we have to do this manually, NetSuite is able to provide this kind of information.
The report tax on sales and tax on purchase, which is a base for this reporting, it will work with the new tax codes automatically. But of course, it's okay. That's good. So there is a solution, semi automatic solution for all our.
It's better than nothing.
I agree. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this has been the last question. So with that, I think we are at the end of our webinar.
There is one last one more comment. You don't want to?
Yeah, I think it's a political question and not related to NetSuite.
Okay.
Still interesting, but not for this forum.
No, it summarized a little bit that there's really a lot to do, and we will hopefully it will have a benefit for the business in Germany, so that we all have all our companies benefit from this change. That's basically the idea of the government. I think that they do it. No? Of course, they probably underestimated the effort they bring to all the companies. We at NetSuite and as NetSuite solution provider try to make this as small as possible and to help you. So, okay.
Yeah, thanks for these last words, Peter. I will thank all the attendees. Thanks for your interest. In the next days, we will send you a link to our website where you can review the questions and get further information. Please keep your eyes open on your email account. Thank you very much. I will close the meeting now.
Thank you also from our side.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.